something like the Tristana would be a good early pick from the side of 927 Fenerbahçe. They guarantee themselves a strong 2v2. It's also a really good answer to a potential Jarvan that would come out from the other side. I think Tristana would make the most sense here, Menik.
I can understand that. Fenerbahçe looking perhaps towards that top lane as they lock in the Jarvan, another power pick, another strong pick.
Sure.
Sejuani is still up here for Forlan, that Olaf available as well.
But the problem you have is that Tristana is commonly known as a good answer to Jarvan because every time he tries to engage, he then gets blown away by the Tristana ultimate. And it's kind of obnoxious. One of the few times I've seen it work relatively well was actually with the Camille and Morgana combo in the European playoffs. And that it can be a good answer to someone like Trist. So given that we saw Team 1 play Morgana earlier, maybe 1907 Fenerbahçe also have the Morgana in their back pocket.
Team 1 picking one of Marth's comfort picks in the Orianna very early on. Fenerbahçe have a few options available to them. Could bring out the Twitch once again for Padden. We have seen him play this Kog'Maw throughout the course of Worlds. Actually got a pentakiller on it, and it will be locked in for him. Doesn't have the protection of the Lulu.
Here. Yeah, they're probably going to go for the Janna once again. It might be a little bit of a rough laning phase, but they have engaged, they have scaling. Once again, 907 Fenerbahçe going towards that team fight. And they're making the argument that, you know what, Team 1, we don't think that you can close out the early game lead well enough. And so they're just going to go for the scaling option once again.
Well, if you can get to that late game, which we've seen Fenerbahçe do in the last couple of games, it can definitely work out for you. Team 1 need to find a way to stop 1907 Fenerbahçe from really getting there, because at the moment I'm looking at their composition, I'm saying this isn't early game focus, this is scaling with the Tristana and the Orianna.
Yes, but typically you'd expect someone like a Tristana to have a little bit more laning power than the Kog'Maw, especially depending on who it's paired up with. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Thresh ban away from the side of 1907 Fenerbahçe as well, just so that there's not that huge risk against the Janna. They don't want to run the possibility of just straight up losing the 2v2.
Well, they are going to remove the Blitzcrank, which is strong into the Kog'Maw and the Janna.
Yep.
The Thresh as well would make a lot of sense. Team 1 now looking for their next ban. They've taken Syndra away, so there's no Syndra into Orianna matchup for Frozen, and they'll remove Trundle from the pool as well. One of Thorgrin's better matchups into that Maokai in the top lane.
Now I'm just expecting a Cho'Gath to come out from 1907 Fenerbahçe, put Crash on the Jarvan, put the Cho'Gath up in the top, and then probably a Corki in the middle lane. You'd be stacking up quite a lot of magic damage with both the Kog'Maw and the Corki, but he'd be a pretty safe option into the Orianna for the most part. And with things like Talia and Syndra already banned away, you're kind of limited in terms of what's the best next mid laner that you can really send into the Orianna, unless he wants to go for something a little more aggressive. He may even choose to go for something like an Aurelion Sol, but we'll see.
You've already predicted it. You predicted it even before we got into picks and bans, so I'm looking forward to
I'm not thinking, see, I have this feeling I'm confusing it. Yeah, I think Marth is the Aurelion Sol player, not him. So Cassio is another one. I completely forgot about Cassio. Cassio would be fine here as well for 1907 Fenerbahçe.
I have to see if they do decide to pick it. It's going to be Gragas for Crash once again. He's proven that he really likes that champion, very comfortable on it. Team 1 are saving their jungler for that final pick, so I really want to see something from Forlan that can help facilitate Team 1 in the early game. It is going to be the Aurelions.
Called it. Definitely all predicted. That's totally what I expected.
Okay,
this is the
so
bit where you praise me. This is your analytical ability.
You truly are the thunder in the night, the one that rains down predictions before the storm comes on, the alpha of predictions, and it is the Aurelion Sol. Now, it is going to be Forlan picking up the Rek'Sai as well, so a bit more aggression, a bit stronger in that early game. Team 1 need to get ahead, need to get that ball rolling, because we've seen how good 1907 Fenerbahçe are if they get into that late game team fighting portion of the matchup.
So this reminds me a lot of their Game 2 composition for Team 1. They have the Maokai, they have the Rek'Sai, they have a big front line. They don't have a third tank in the form of Galio, but they still have the ability to peel a little bit more with the Orianna, still providing a healthy amount of utility, and they've decided to go for the Ardent Sensor off down in the bottom lane. 2 hyper carries, 2 Ardent Sensor supports that provide a lot of utility as well. But the big thing that we have to look at is the Aurelion Sol on the side of 927 Fenerbahçe. This guy likes to roam. This is a champion that's all about moving from mid off onto a side, and the reason why he does pretty well into Oriana typically is because you can just push that Ori in very quickly, very early. It's very hard for her to exert pressure in the 1 versus 1 because she's always fighting into a minion wave. So it's important for her to get to the lane first to start trading aggressively against the Aurelion Sol. But even in the early levels, she can't be as aggressive as she would like until she gets something like the Lost Chapter completed. So Aurelion Sol going to have a lot of control in the early game, and I want to see him move around the map to set up his other laners for success.
I have to see how much Frozen is willing to move around the map, because we have seen in the past that even on this Aurelion Sol, in the matchup they played against Supermassive, he tended to actually just to stay in the mid lane and let the team come to him more than actually roam around the map. So we'll have to see if he's willing to give up a little bit of his laning phase to get into those other lanes. We do have a pause coming out at the start of the match, which is why we're not quite jumping in just quite yet. But we will be there as soon as possible. Now, Prediction King, God amongst men. Talk to me a little bit about how these early game junglers are going to fight off against each other.
Ooh, well, with the Rek'Sai, I'm expecting pressure to likely go towards the top lane. That has been a trend every single game, so I think it's a fairly safe prediction to make.
You're the Prediction King. I trust anything you say, Vedius.
But Forlan, he has the tendency to try and get at least a small lead onto Vert. We do know that he is kind of one of the star players of the team, very much about playing split push. And while he hasn't done a huge amount of it this game, in the game that they won, and even on his Sejuani game, he was having a huge impact for a lot of the early game plays. So I think that just investing early resources top would not be a bad thing for the side of Team One. Whereas for Crash, I feel like that he's not really going to focus on trying to set up a lot of early ganks. I feel like he needs to invest early in vision, trying to track where the Rek'Sai is. Maybe he should just go top for the possible counter gank, but he should work with Thaldrin to try and make plays probably in the mid. That seems to be a tendency that 1907 Fenerbahçe use. We saw it from the Talia earlier on in the day when they ran the Maokai, and what it means that is if Frozen has a lead, it's even easier to get the push mid. You have the early item spike, and then you can go bot or top. But what we've seen from 1907 Fenerbahçe is they don't really go bottom very often. They just kind of leave them, and they're like, hey, at 30 minutes, you'll have items, and then we'll come hang out with you, you know?
It tends to work out for them as well, though, so not always the worst tactic in the world. We are still paused. There's an audio issue with Team One at the moment, so we want to get that rectified, of course, before we get back into game. I have to make sure that these players are playing at optimal capacity, especially since it is a best-of-5 series for that spot in the round of 16 in the top 16 teams in the world. And they're fighting in the group stages.
They want to be able to hear each other, you know, because I couldn't cast the game if I couldn't hear you.
I think you probably could, in all honesty. I'm not sure how much you actually gain from my...
I gain a lot. I gain energy from you, you know. You love to feel passion about the game. You tell me about things to look at, and you ask me great questions. And I think that without you, it would just be me talking a lot about predictions for the game, you know, which we don't want that all the time. You know,
if you could predict every section of the game, that would be quite impressive.
I don't think it would be.
Okay, I think I'd be impressed, maybe because I can't predict it as well as you can. But let's move on from those predictions and let's really just talk about what who the key members are for both of these teams coming in, because you can always look at pattern and say, oh, the late game, you know, it's Cogmore, he does a lot of work. But when you're looking at Team One, who are your key standout members that you really want to perform?
It's got to be Forlan. I feel like that so far throughout this series, he has had pretty solid performances. Maybe game one, he was a little bit lacking on his Sejuani, but outside from that, on his Rek'Sai, he's been very impactful in the early game. His Olaf in game 3 looked very good in terms of what he was able to do in terms of early ganking and setting up his laners for a few early kills. But he is kind of like that early guy that does a few stuff within like the first 5-10 minutes of the game, but then doesn't really do much past the 10-minute mark. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the fact that they leave such a big window of an inactive jungler not really doing a huge amount, I think is where you find the enemy team being able to stall out, being able to find avenues back into games, even though Team One, it should be the ones dictating the pace of things. So what I'd like to see from him on this Rek'Sai is more of what we saw in game 2. You get the early games, you set off your laners for success, right? But then you keep it up, you keep the pressure going, you move to lanes where you know you have a strong 1v1 or 2v2, and then you continue to snowball. You try and go for these early towers. You go for these early dragons. And the pressure just needs to mount. And he needs to be the guy to recognize when it is safe to take that Baron and when it is risky. because I feel like that he is one of the vocal players of the team. We talked about how this is a very young roster, and it's very easy to see on camera how animated he gets when stuff happens, especially in his team's favor. So I think that he needs to calm down a little bit, think holistically about how the game's going, because they're only one game away from being eliminated from Worlds.
But what an experience it will have been for them as a team as well to fight off, to go 0-3 down in their group, then to beat Direwolves 2 times, to be able to take a game off Fenerbahçe, who are the only team to take first when they weren't in the first seed of the group, the only team to upset the apple cart in that regard. And then Fenerbahçe looking at a position in the round of 16 and looking at the teams they're going to face against, they'll be pretty confident that they can cause some upsets. I think that they probably won't be expecting to go any further. We heard Padden talking about how it's more about them getting a few wins in group stages than actually accelerating into quarters, but they'll be pretty happy with how they've done thus far and pretty confident coming into whatever group they end up in.
Yeah, the thing is, because they're not from one of the major regions, they could actually get slotted into any of the groups, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So there are a few good groups where maybe they could have a few potential upsets. In my head, like, they could cause some issues in Group D, they could cause some issues in Group B. I think like A and C.
I think A's the easy one. SKT, we've heard of these guys.
But yeah, I think that there's possibilities. You never really know. Like, I think Gigabyte Marines are the example of that. Albus Nox Luna as well. Like, there have been so many teams coming up from the emerging regions that have just been causing upsets, especially in these best-of-1 scenarios. Especially when you look at some of the individual talent that we have been seeing from 1907 Fenerbahçe, because Padden, yeah, okay, this time his lane was actually exploited. They actually really hard shut him down, and he still ends up coming back into the game. And is that a mistake from Team 1, or is that credit to 1907 Fenerbahçe? You can look at it from both angles.
Personally, I think you look at it from the fact he didn't die. Like,
That's
he went unkilled in the entire
that.
game. You can get shut down, but if you're not giving the enemy team too much, you're still in an okay position. We are going through ready checks.
Nice.
Hopefully we'll be back into the game in just a second. So, Fenerbahçe up against Team 1.
2-1 in favor of 1907 Fenerbahçe.
In favor of the Turkish team. That also means that the all-time track record is even between the two teams. It's 8-8. So this could be the decider. This could be Turkey going 1 game ahead in the all-time record between the two. We are back onto the Summoner's Rift for what could be the decisive game in this series. Some Team 1 fans in the audience, as you can hear, Vedius.
Yep. Always good to have that support when you're not in your home region.
I think the part of it that I love is the fact that you can see fans just grasp onto these stories and grasp onto these players and say, look, I might not watch you every week. I might not know. I might not know who Padden was before we came into this tournament, but now I know that he's this double-edged sword. He's this spoon in your thigh when you're in laning phase, this blunt spoon trying to chip away at your skin, but then when we get out of it, he's this steak knife that goes straight through your heart and takes you down in team fights.
Vivid, but accurate, sure.
Should be glad I didn't dive into the medical, like, straight through the dissection.
And speaking of Padden, he will be playing the Kog'Maw along with the Janna in the bottom lane. Now, typically you don't expect that to be able to win out on the 2 versus 2 against a Tristana and a Karma, simply because they have a lot more wave clear than Padden and Japone will have.
Padden's gone Relic Shield
exactly,
well,
yeah, and also the Relic Shield too, so you lack on that AD, and it's all about funneling gold into Japone, making sure that he gets the unsensor as soon as possible, so that you have a bit of an item spike. Marth, cheeky mid laner, stealing away one of the Raptors.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a risk as well, because sometimes it can put your jungler behind.
It's alright though, like because you'll still get the main large one, which will give him level 2. And then he can do red and blue and flip it. So it's not the end of the world. You can see as well, Crash soloed his red buff, so he will be starting there and then making his way towards the Raptors. And this is very much what we expect from early trading. Actually, a little more damage than I was expecting, gotta be honest.
You can see that you've gone towards the AP support item on Redbird as well for the extra damage in the train.
Spell Thief.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I always get that name confused for some reason. I always think of Frostfang.
Frostfang. I think they're about to hit level 2. Off this minion, it should be there, so now they can go in.
Jump in with the explosive charge. They have Ignite as well. Heal used early by Padden to keep himself safe.
I feel like they should just play the laning phase a little bit more reserved overall. Like, you're going to lose that push, just accept it. Wait for the minion wave to hit the tower. I guess they didn't want to be completely zoned away from XP. Meanwhile, in the mid, you can see Frozen being annoying. That's what Aurelion Sol does. He just pushes you in. But you've got to be careful of those early ganks, especially from champions like the Rek'Sai.
You can see the respect that Marth's given to Frozen as well. One of the sort of highest skill ceiling players on this team, you might say. Of course, Frozen used to play for Longzhu, had a team set up to be built around him, and then left to join Fenerbahçe, and has always been known as a highly mechanically skilled mid laner who can exploit any advantage he sees in his opponent.
Well, he certainly had a great game 3 on that Syndra. He didn't really get a lot of kills in the early game, but he maintained a healthy farm advantage over his lane opposition. And even though Marth was sitting at 3-1, Frozen actually had the gold lead. It just goes to show that you can trade kills for farm as long as the rest of your team does not suffer as a massive result. Speaking of farm, you can see that Patton has been able to claw back some of the deficit that he was putting early on, but they are still being zoned away from a lot of that back.
Forlan's down towards the bottom side of this map as well. Of course, they know that Japon's heal is down. They are running the heal barrier lane, so they will now step around and spot out Forlan. Clear out that control ward that he placed. So 75 gold down the drain, and now Forlan is going to get collapsed on here by Padden and Japon. He jumps straight into Crash, knocked back with the body slam, gets the knock up himself. There's no Aurelion Sol around the corner. He was all the way back in base, and now Forlan will burrow once again and get away with the help of Marth and Redbert.
Crash going a little bit aggressive there, but you're quite right. If Frozen was still in the middle lane, that would have at the very least been a flash out from Forlan. Unfortunately, Pan and Japon didn't want to flash over the wall to commit to the objective. They already know that they're at a deficit in the bottom lane, and by sacrificing those summoner spells, that increases the likelihood of potentially getting dived. So they choose the safe option. They force Forlan out of his jungle. And we talked about how he was one of the players to watch, especially in this game 4, already using his early strength on Rek'Sai to try and get in the face of 1907 Fenerbahçe, yet to look, though, for an early gank top.
Going bot instead. Japon caught out with the explosive charge, has to flash away. Padden, the new target, the Ignite comes down, but he's turned back onto Redbert, who uses the heal. And here comes Forlan looking for the knock of the barrier. Instead, they go for Japon. First blood to Forlan, and the second kill as well goes to Absolute. Eventually, Forlan will fall to Padden, using that passive effectively. Frozen's roamed down from that mid lane. Redbert looking to kill himself on the tower. Absolute exhausted, and Frozen's going to get himself a double kill. Actually, manages to secure Absolute at the end.
What looked like a great gank from the side of Team 1, especially off the back of Forlan, how we talked he needed to get these early ganks going. Things started off well in the bottom lane, but the turnaround from Frozen, now Thaldrin, looking to be that pillar once more, goes on to Vert.
Gets the knock up onto Vert, looking for the final bit of damage, but the sap magic's enough, and Vert, with the help of the minions, keeps himself alive.
So let's look back at how this happened. Japon takes a huge amount of damage on the Janna, being so squishy in the early game. Remember, minions also hitting in the face of both Pan and Japon, and Forlan, he just makes the loop-de-dupe. He goes up towards his blue, comes back down, and he knows that with the 3 members, they can get the kills. And at this point, they think, oh, we're good. We get 2 for 1, our bottom lane's ahead, but Frozen, using his E to very quickly translate from mid down to bot. Absolute still has the flash, but decides not to use it because he knows that Frozen can get the follow-up, which means that now the mid laner for 1907 Fenerbahçe, the superstar here in Frozen, already off to a fantastic start.
And it's pocket pick Aurelion Sol working out for them as well. Great prediction from you in picks and bans for them to bring this one out. Absolute's going to jump onto Japon. They just want to keep trading. The chain is not going to quite connect. But meanwhile, Forlan is getting chased off by the Voice of Light and the Star Surge. The stun connects, and Forlan's going to try and dodge his way away, but you cannot get away from Aurelion Sol.
Oh, things are looking rough right now as Frozen picks up his 3rd kill of the game. We talked about how, as 1907 Fenerbahçe typically bring the plays to him, he is now bringing himself to the rest of the map. He is a roaming machine, and his roams are not over yet, but he will be spotted out, so he's going to disengage. Frozen coming up huge for 1907 Fenerbahçe when they're only 1 win away from getting that top 16 spot at Worlds.
And it's the first time we've really seen 1907 Fenerbahçe have an early gold lead in this series. They're actually 1,000 gold ahead at only 7 minutes in. They've managed to get a kill and an assist onto Padden, which gets in the Xerxes Greaves early on. Absolute has a CS advantage in this lane, but as much as Team 1 have tried to focus down towards the bottom side of the map, Fenerbahçe have been able to respond.
And also note how Frozen is also staying ahead in the farm, even though he's roaming around the map so much. And that is because of his ability to so easily push in these mid-minion waves. He just pushes, leaves, and the bottom lane, they have to play reserve because they don't know where he is right now. As you can see, Marth trying to make a play up top, but Frozen doesn't care.
Gonna try and get behind them. There's the Star Surge. Won't get the stun on Absolute. Redbird dodges around it as well. Frozen there. Redbird with the flash away, trying to escape, and will survive to fight another day.
They're lucky that Frozen did not have the Voice of Light, but the pressure was successfully applied. They get the flash out from Redbird, and he can now look to make another play bot, while Forlan, even though he's in the top side, cannot find a successful gank.
And 1907 Fenerbahçe, especially Crash, are playing vision control down towards this bot side river as well. They know they want to come down here, so they've got 2 control wards in the river and stop Team 1 from having any idea when that Aurelion Soul is moving down to bot.
But this is where players like Forlan become super critical, because remember, this is the guy that gets a few early ganks and then he just kind of stops. He goes into farm mode. He's like, I gotta get some of my core items built. I gotta focus more on vision. But he can't afford to slow down now. He needs to continue his activity. He needs to try and find ways to help his team get back into the game. Maybe shut down Frozen, get a kill onto Marth. Because if he just goes back to farm mode and if he tries to keep playing reserve, then Frozen is going to keep roaming around the map and start snowballing both Tholdren and Pan.
It's the time you look at Absolute and Redbird and you say they have to come up big as well, because Padden and Japone are in a losing matchup in this bottom lane. The Tristana and the Karma should win into the Kog'Maw and the Janna, and even with a little bit of help, then the Explosive Cast will knock back. The stun still connects onto Marth. He's exhausted. A good Shockwave will catch up Frozen and Crash, but the Voice of Light just devours Marth. Meanwhile, Team 1 are going to get first tower blood towards this bottom side. Better from Forlan. A little bit of early pressure towards that bottom lane.
I like the answer here from Team 1. They recognize the bottom lane of 1907 Fenerbahçe had backed. When you have a Tristana, you take down those towers very quickly. You also have a lot of wave clear in that duo, so you can just quickly shred through the minion wave. They get that first tower blood, but it will result in the loss of life of the mid laner. Crash, he comes from the fog of war. There is no vision. Unfortunately for Marth, he tries to flash the Q stun from Frozen, but he ends up getting hit anyway because of the hitbox. Then the chase from the Voice of Light means that that is one dead robot lady and a 4-0 ethereal drain.
Imagine what it would feel like to get hit by a Voice of Light. It's like this black
being
hole
punched in the face by the sun. It hurts. I can tell from experience.
Yes, yes. I'm sure you can, Vedius. Team 1 deciding to rotate up towards the top side now with Absolute and Redbird. They have got first tower blood, but they are still 1,200 gold behind and need to work out a way that it can actually gain an advantage, get back into this game, stop 1907 Fenerbahçe from just snowballing it away and choking them out of this matchup.
Well, to be fair to Team 1, they have set their bottom lane top, and they've got the jungler moving up here as well, so they want to start sieging onto this second tier 1 tower, but Tholdren and Aurelion Sol are making their way to get a collapse.
Yeah, Forlan did not realize Tholdren was in the bush, then flashes over straight into the face of Crash. And boom, slap, Crash gets the kill.
Frozen doing so much work in this early game. It is impossible for Marth to follow 1907 Fenerbahçe answer with the tower in the bottom lane and extend their gold lead. And just notice the difference, Medic. Whenever we see Team 1 with this early lead, the gold always felt very close. It always felt like 1907 Fenerbahçe was somehow maintaining healthy CS leads or somehow trading structures to just somehow keep the gold even. But when 1907 Fenerbahçe get the lead, they're the ones that have suddenly propelled this to a 2,000 gold lead out of nowhere. The towers are even. There's a huge kill lead, and it's all off the back of this 4-0-1 Frozen, who's really running away with the game right now.
Already completed his first item in that GLP 800 and is 1,000 gold ahead of Marth at the moment. Crash looking for Absolute, who can just jump away. Gets himself back underneath the tower. Redbird was hiding in the bush as well. And Crash is like, oh, did not realize there was a Karma there.
But now they're the ones that have push on the top lane. 3 members, Frozen on his way to make it 4. The teleport is available for Tholdren too. And it's likely that Team 1 will lose tempo on the play. They're the ones that are likely going to lose out on this extra tower. And they're struggling right now because it's all off the back of the mid control that 1907 Fenerbahçe have. every time Team 1 want to make a play, Frozen is there. Every time they try to go for a 2v2 top, no, it's 2v3. Frozen's there. Oh, we try to make a gank bot. Oh, no, Frozen's there. He's always just getting in the way, and you have to wonder, Forlan, maybe you should go to Frozen instead, or at the very least try. It's difficult because he's 4-0-1, but you're kind of running out of options at this point.
Mountain Drake started up by Forlan as well as the Rift Herald. It's taken by Padden and Japone on the other side of the map. Once again, Padden and Japone able to survive the laning phase, actually ahead on CS now over their laning counterparts, and Team 1 have just been unable to crack the code that you have to defeat 1907 Fenerbahçe's bottom lane.
But we have to remember that for Team 1, they still have a pretty good team fight comp. Tristana, Orianna, scales very nicely into the late game. Tristana 1-1-1, not that far behind in terms of farm. You have a Maokai who's going to be a very solid frontline in the late game, and the thing about Aurelion Sol is he actually doesn't do that well into tanks because he doesn't have a huge amount of burst damage, for example. Like, you just got to sit there and slowly shred through them and kind of hope for the best. But I mean, if you're 4-0-1, I mean, you'll still hurt, right? But in terms of the late game, there's still the possibility for Team 1. It's just about whether or not they have the opportunity to get there and how well 1907 Fenerbahçe can utilize this lead.
Oh, we saw how well they closed out Game 1. I'm sure they'll be wanting much of the same in Game 4. The question becomes who steps up. If you're Team 1, we said it needs to be Forlan, but he hasn't been able to get the ganks off onto Frozen, so now you look at the next member and you say, okay, who is your next star? Who is the next person who can carry this team? Vert in the past has been a split-pushing god for Team 1. He's drawn attention off towards the side lane. The last time we saw him play Maokai, he did exactly that. Can he do it again in this game? Can he shut down Thaldrin and keep Fenerbahçe guessing as to his position?
Not if Thaldrin goes mid lane.
That's what Thaldrin does best. Ganking with Frozen. There we go. Comment of Legend. Mark flashes away. Thaldrin looking for the engage. The Star Surge connects. The Voice of Light as well. The Shockwave does not. And Mark goes down, but Burt is able to lock Thaldrin underneath the tower, and it ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. Forlan on his way. Frozen still does a lot of work with that Celestial expansion. The explosive cast comes out. The flash away from Vert.
But now the mid laner is down for Team 1. 1907 Fenerbahçe have the Rift Herald as Wen, and now it is a 4 versus 4 in the middle lane. Team 1 realize they have to concede the objective, and the gold lead continues to mount against the Brazilian squad.
They give up the first tower, now looking for the second. Fenerbahçe with a good amount of damage onto it. The Star Surge onto Vert as well. He's getting taken lower and lower. He will survive. Frozen caught under the tower. Ignite from Redbird. Forlan jumps in, but immediately Fenerbahçe collapse, and that is a very dead Rek'Sai. Fenerbahçe looking for a 3-tower push off this single Rift Herald. We said, could they accelerate? Could they take the win? Well, with Thaldrin and Frozen, they can do anything they damn well please. They're looking for that mid lane inhibitor. They will take it at 16 minutes into this game.
That is absolutely insane. Forlan tries to go in and stop the siege from Fenerbahçe, but they go, no, we're gonna kill you. We know how strong we are. We're gonna continue our push. They kept the Rift Herald alive all the way up until the inhibitor, and this team looks so good, and it is all off the back of Frozen and Thaldrin together. They make the classic 1907 Fenerbahçe move of moving the tank top into the mid lane. They get the collapse down onto the opposition mid laner, and that just opens up this free alleyway for them to just run down. This is where the play all starts off. Keep your eyes on Thaldrin. He's in the fog of war. He flashes to get the flash out of Mark, and he tries to follow with the knockup on the EQ combo, but then he just tanks the tower up long enough to allow Frozen to get the kills. Now, while Team 1 come and act as a response, Padden and Japone are already on their way down. They know that with this kill, they want to siege onto, at the very least, this tier 1. They quickly take the tower, they quickly run up mid, but I don't think we have more time because I think we have another fight.
And Redbird caught out by Frozen, flashes away, the explosive cast comes out as well. There's the Voice of Light onto Forlan. Vert looking for the flank, and he might get it. Hits up 3 members of Fenerbahçe. He's going to use that Nature's Grasp as well, but Fenerbahçe line up, and immediately Padden just gets the damage down from the backline. Frozen dominating 6-0-2, and this is why you're scared if you are in a group that Fenerbahçe could meet you in. They are a strong team, they accelerate their gold lead, and they are so good at closing out games.
Look at already how they're setting up on the map. They quickly push up mid. They're grabbing the minion wave on bot. They're forcing their wave clear to go and answer it. And we have to look back at how this fight happens. Again, you can see Vert trying to come in from the river, getting a flank onto Frozen, but Team One are engaging when the rest of their team are disengaging. There's this split focus that we see all the time from the lineup of Team One. That's just an essence of poor coordination, and you have to come back to the fact that this is still a young team, considering that they were only formed in May earlier this year. They have made impressive strides domestically and now internationally, and unfortunately at the final hurdle, they are struggling as a dominating and convincing 1907 Fenerbahçe sit on an 8,000 gold lead as Thorndren may be caught out.
Chasing onto him, the explosive charge won't quite do it, but here comes the Void Rush. Thorndren trying to dodge away, but Forlan will be able to take down the bedrock of Fenerbahçe as Thorndren falls for the second time this game.
Good pick there from Team One onto an overextended Jarvan the Fourth. Thorndren really should not have been in that position. It's not very helpful if you're a pillar and you're in the wrong place.
You can't build anything on a pillar in the wrong place.
Exactly.
It's like having a pillar in the car park.
Yeah, what are you gonna do with that? I ain't gonna put my car on top of the pillar. So you can see the pillar is clearly in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Team One say, well, we gotta knock this down because cars have got to park. And they're able to get a very swift kill. So Forlan, he's able to get a bit of gold under his belt, deciding that he will go for the Titanic Hydra build. Hasn't even completed his Cinder Hulk yet, but it does not slow down 1907 Fenerbahçe. They're now looking for their third Tier 2 tower of the game.
7,000 gold ahead, only 20 minutes into the game. Can even just wait for that mid lane to push in because the super minions are there. It will be very difficult for Team One to hold. The game is not over for them yet, though. They do have the possibility of a good shockwave. They have Absolute, who's now at an item and a half on that Tristana. She will only scale up more as the game continues. But facing into Frozen, facing into Pattern, who have shown us so consistently that they are good team fighters, you have to worry if you're a Team One fan.
You are right. We have to remember in Game 3, Team One were in a pretty dominant position, and 1907 Fenerbahçe found a way back. But now Frozen, if he makes plays like this, allows Team One to come back.
Nature's Grass comes out, there's the Righteous Story as well. Flash, Shockwave onto Frozen, pull him back, root him down, knock him up, and kill him so quickly. Team One able to collapse.
1907 Fenerbahçe can't afford to be making these mistakes because Team One will punish you. They see you overextended, they see you out of position, and they will very quickly collapse and take these free kills. Remember, they got so many of their free Barons because 1907 Fenerbahçe were in the wrong place at the wrong time. You cannot afford to underestimate this team even though you have such a significant gold advantage. They fail even to get that Tier 2 tower in the top lane. Team One are still not out of this game entirely. Orianna working towards her second item. She's about halfway there. You can see Absolute almost completed the Static Shiv as well. The inhibitor has now respawned. I feel like Team One, there's still a potential for them, especially with their tendency to play around those sneaky Barons.
All it takes is a catch or two. You've just had a shutdown onto Frozen. That's 450 extra gold in your back pocket, and you are pretty comfortable with. You're starting to hit these 2-3 items on, well, 2 items or so on most of your carries. And sometimes when a team is in a dominant position like this, when they are a game away from advancing through Worlds, when they're looking for groups to the top 16 for the first time in the organization's history, in the players' history, they are a little bit over-eager with some of the plays they make. And I think we just saw that from Frozen. He will need a calm head. He will need Thorndren to say, look, as the captain of the team, we just take a step back, we reset, we have our push up towards this top side, and we look just to take down a tower and extend that gold lead.
So much more patient play now from 1907 Fenerbahçe. They're going to clear out the vision in the top side of Team One's jungle. Their eyes will be set on that mid lane inhibitor, which remember they took at just under 16 minutes in the game. While Thorndren continues to push down in the bottom.
They took it so early, Vedius, that I had our stats team ping me with the quickest game at Worlds, just in case this was going to be the case. But Team One have been able to hold it back, been able to keep on in this game, and now Fenerbahçe are grouping for this mid lane in here.
Where's Forlan going?
Baron Vision?
Not entirely sure what his plan of action here is, because he's going to lose his inhibitor in the middle lane.
Maybe looking for a catch afterwards, if they've accepted that they're going to lose the inhibitor anyway.
Yeah, he could use this as an opportunity to just hang around the Baron, go for a sneak. This is what he's expecting from 1907 Fenerbahçe right now. Let's see if his plan will work out.
They are grouping up towards that Baron, but they don't have vision on it yet.
They're both waiting for a pick or a play, or it's literally a waiting game.
If you're 1907 Fenerbahçe, this is an okay strategy because the mid's going to push in. You expect
Team 1 to react. They get free farm now. But here we go. Okay, he has actually been spotted. Look at the ward just behind him.
Crash comes across the wall. They're looking for the collapse. Forlan knocked back with the explosive cask away from his team. Now he needs to work out. Can he dodge around? He gets caught with the bow of the slow. Here comes the TP as Team 1 decide they need to take this fight. Forlan with the Void Rush jumps across the wall, but he's dead. And that is the jungler down for Team 1.
And now the Baron is prime pickings for the side of 1907 Fenerbahçe. Forlan, we talked about how he needed to be the player that could maybe save his team. He could not quite find the early ganks. He could not quite find ways to help his team back into the game. And now he's going to be the one to die out of position and potentially give this Baron over to 1907 Fenerbahçe.
You feel if 1907 Fenerbahçe get to this Baron, it is the game. The shockwave comes out, Fenerbahçe get it. Now they can look for the push. Tholjin looking to jump onto Vert. There's the Cataclysm. The Kiddens come out. Try and force them away. Tholjin still going to advance, still going to push forward into the base of Team 1.
Now look in the bottom lane as well. There's a minion wave stacking up. They've pushed the mid minion wave with the Baron empowered buff, but they have a lot of gold to spend. Rather than overcommit, they're just going to go back to base, buy a couple of new items, refresh some of their vision. They're going to be happy with the state that they're currently in.
Very comfortable position for them. Blade of the Ruin King and a Runans on that Cogmore. You've got the Ardent Sensor completed. You've got Knight's Vow as well. That Cog is pretty safe when it comes to fights. And Tholjin on this Jarvan is having a moderately strong performance. He'll be comfortable on that as well. So if you are a Fenerbahçe fan, you'll be pretty confident that they should be able to close out with a 10,000 gold lead at the 25-minute mark.
It would be a big... This is definitely 1907 Fenerbahçe's game to lose.
Or Team 1's game to win. Because if they make enough plays to win this game, they have won this game for themselves.
That is accurate, yes. Yes, that is very true. But given the deficit that they are in, one is much easier than the other. Now we see Vert popping the Righteous Glory, trying to catch Tholjin out.
Can't quite get that. Tholjin just too speedy.
Look at the bottom lane as well. Many members of Team 1 grouping up in the top, while 1907 Fenerbahçe now want to use the Baron buff. 2 minutes left on it. Only a few base towers stand in the way of the Turkish representatives joining the top 16 at Worlds, making it to the group stage.
And that's another inhibitor tower just gone. Team 1 unable to respond. 1907 Fenerbahçe are just within arm's reach of the top 16 of the group stage of teams like SKT. Tholjin goes in. The root's going to land onto Crash, but Padden's still alive off towards the side. There's the explosive cast. It knocks back the tree. A good shockwave, but it's just no damage from Marv. And Crash goes in. He engages onto Forlan. That's another kill as Frozen steps forward looking for the damage onto Marv and Absolute. And the Celestia expansion is enough. Absolute gets taken down and Team 1 get destroyed by Fenerbahçe.
Massive team fight win. 1907 Fenerbahçe with a fantastic overall final game will take them to the top 16.
Superb game by Fenerbahçe to close out the series. 3-1, they'll defeat Team 1 and they'll go through to Worlds Groups.
Considering how close the series was overall, it was a little bit surprising to see them so quickly get a massive early game advantage and then just be unrelenting with their pressure. Frozen roaming around the map so much, Tholjin still setting up a bunch of ganks in the middle lane, and then getting an inhibitor at 16 minutes into the game. 1907 Fenerbahçe very firmly demonstrated their dominance over their Brazilian counterparts, and they will be making their way out of the playing stage and into the group stage.
Demonstrating why they deserve to be in groups as well. Not even the #1 seed coming into their group. HKA were top of that group in terms of pure analysis, but they were able to beat HKA in the tiebreaker, get the matchup against Team 1, and then take down Team 1 after one game of a little bit of an upset for them, a little bit of shakiness, but you'll be looking at that team and saying, well, I think they could upset. I think they could take a surprise game here or there coming into the last 16 at Worlds.
And it's going to be exciting, right? Because there are a lot of fun players to watch. But the big story for me is the fact that Crash subs into this lineup. He hasn't really played with the team at all. There is a language barrier as well. Yet, even though he didn't have consistent and amazing performances throughout the tournament, he was very clutch. He stole a number of Barons. He found a number of great picks. Even in this series, we saw a number of spectacular Gragas ultimates and team fights overall. And I think you have to give a lot of praise to him for joining the squad and being a part of it as they make their way through the play-in stages.
Yeah, 1907 Fenerbahçe have secured their spot in the group stage. And to hear how they did it in Game 4, let's hand it over to our analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Of course, for me, I feel like it comes down to one champion alone, and that is Aurelion Sol.
Yeah, he had a pretty big influence over this game. I don't know if you're going to follow it up with more. It was a good pick overall. There's been a lot of pressure around bot lane over the course of this series, lots of plays being forced, and this time you have Frozen making sure that he grabs the aggressor in the lane. He's able to get around the map and grab the tempo for these plays.
Yeah, funny to see, of course, that the shoe was on the other foot in this case when you had Fenerbahçe roaming rather, opposed to Team 1.
It was interesting to see, too. We can take a look at the first replay where we saw exactly what it can look like when Aurelion Sol starts to take off. In this case, when he shows up to clean up.
And this is a big play just because, like we're saying, so much aggression down around this bot lane. They're going hard on Japone. And you see Aurelion Sol is just leaving mid now. That's what's so impressive, is that they have so long to kind of cover this potential weakness in the bot lane, especially given the fact that Patton also struggled in this series on and off. It was 2 good games, 2 bad games, and this time this would have been a horrible 1 for 2 and potentially getting in a lot of trouble, but Frozen shows up.
And the cleanest thing is you're watching 2 different stars hit at the same time, saves the exhaust, and honestly makes it look too easy. Frozen being able to play one of Marth's champions against him, roam better than him, go to the bottom lane and capitalize on the over-aggression, perhaps, of Team 1.
And honestly, from there, it just feels like the Frozen show. And while other people definitely did play their part just across the board, this game, he was everywhere. He was dishing out so much damage, so consistently a threat. It just feels impossible to play against Aurelion Sol when he's this far ahead.
Yeah, he's one of those very oppressive champions, because even if you're winning your lane, suddenly you have to worry about, well, in 10 seconds, anytime I go aggressive, someone could show up and make this a 2v1, and that's really hard to deal with. And once he starts getting fed, he actually starts getting like pretty good damage as well, the GLP adding a nice extra little bit of burst.
And even having the Jarvan around, of course, the dynamic duo communicating. It wasn't just Aurelion Sol that was there, it was also the Jarvan.
Yeah, and now we take a look at our next replay. We can see in the mid lane, we finally see the use of the Hextech GLP. We see the use of the Rift Herald, everything coming together to shut down the mid lane.
Yep, there's that Jarvan kicking things off. They're able to combo down onto Marth. And there's a good follow-up out of Vert trying to get this first kill, but what's going to really blow this situation up is the rest of the team collapsing all at once. You see the bot lane show up, they're going to channel this Rift Herald, and they're going to make a very aggressive push in the mid lane.
And what's normally just a standard, we got a pick, we set it up, and now we can push for a second turret type of play, then becomes 4 lands over aggression. He should not be staying to the flank too heavily, especially when the rest of his team can't defend and is losing. And then this decision cost them the entire inhibitor, and ultimately just such a big lead for 1907 Fenerbahçe, and it's off the mistakes of Team 1.
Yeah, you could definitely say that that decision cost them the game. You lose an inhib, I believe, at around 60 minutes by the end of this push. It's almost so early that it's good because you have someone to farm in the mid lane now, but 1907 Fenerbahçe are going to keep the pressure up over the rest of that game. There were a couple mistakes where Thaldrun got caught out once or twice, but they're so far ahead, you can kind of feel it in the air that's about to come down.
Yeah, and you can see that the tunnel vision there in Forland, things are going south. He says, I have to make something happen against FB, but there's a Jaina there, there's a Gragas there. It's not just the Aurelion Sol you have to worry about. But when you look across the series, one player really did stand out, and it's going to be our player of the series. It will be Frozen, not just for the last game, but just across the board, consistently winning out in the lane phase and really bringing it home.
Huge CSD across all the games, forced Brewster to get subbed out for Marth, had good team fights, and, great roams as well once he got into that Aurelion Sol, playing all the matchups very well.
Yeah, Patton was a good team fighter, but didn't have the laning that Frozen had. Game number 1, a commanding Talia performance, deserving of a ban afterwards, and then you get the Aurelion Sol performance from him, showing that he's more than just a strong laner, more than someone who just gets a CS lead through his 1v1, but someone that can be everywhere on Summoner's Rift, and when he is, he looks his best, and so does all of 1907.
And you got to think, coming in the group stage, this man will not be allowed to play champions that roam. If any team can help it. Talia should be taken off the board. Aurelion Sol should be taken away from this man, because when he gets the freedom to lose lane, he just feels like a powerhouse.
Putting on a great performance for us so far. Have to see how the rest of 1907 Fenerbahçe does when they reach that group stage.
Yeah, curious to see what they're going to stack up against, what group that they will be placed in, because at the end of the day, they showed some weakness on the bottom side of the map, but it did feel like consistently, despite being shut down early on the bottom lane, they always made up for it in another way.
Yeah, they're very impressive in the fact that they can lose lane. And I'm not going to say gracefully because they were getting dove and it was super aggressive from Team 1, but they can lose lane and they can still come back to a position where they can teamfight successfully. It doesn't stop to impress.
Nope, does not the case. Well, to hear more about that series, we're sending it over to Fish, who has an interview with the victorious top laner.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with 1907 Fenerbahçe's top laner Thaldrin after their impressive 3-1 victory over Team 1. How did you prepare coming out of the group stages, and is this the result you expected going into this best of 5 series?
Yes, but all I can say is we expected to win the series, but in my opinion, our gameplay was not the best. We did a lot of mistakes, and we were expecting to close the series at 3-0, but we did a lot of mistakes in second game, and we ended up losing 1. So I'm happy, but I'm kinda upset about our team play as well.
Well, hopefully you can clean that moving into the next stage of play, next stage of Worlds, actually. Speaking of which, the last time I spoke to you, you told me you're going to finish top of groups, and then you told me you're going to make it to the main group stage. You're now a prophet, Thaldrin. What's next? What's the next prediction you have for us, and what is it going to take for 1907 Fenerbahçe to make it all the way to the grand finals?
This time it's going to be hard for me to make a make a forecast about our future, but all I can say is I think if we are lucky with the draw, we can get out of the group stage as well. I mean the main group stage, but it depends all on draw, I think, because our team is not the best and we all are aware of it, and I don't think we have enough time to fix our issues. But if we go lucky with the draws, I think we have a chance and we have a shot to make to the quarterfinals.
Well, speaking of the draw, that's going to be coming up later on today. Which group would you like to be seeded into, or what teams do you really want to play against at the World Championship?
As you know, we have 2 Koreans, and which they played before in Longzhou. So they want to play against Longzhou, and we all want to play against Longzhou as well. I know it's not going to be an easy match, but we want to go to, I think it was B, if I'm not wrong. We want to either go to the B or D, we want to go, but I don't know, we will see.
Well, there you go, guys. Longzhou, watch out, because 1907 Fenerbahçe is coming up for you guys. We're going to go to a very quick break, but we'll be back with Team WE taking on Yeonja.